What's up, everyone? Sitting here at TD Garden after the Celtics 108-105 overtime loss to the Knicks. They trail now 1-0 in the series. I don't think anybody in the Celtics sphere, or really in the basketball world, really expected them to come out and lose this game. So initial reactions, what do you think went wrong here?
They slowed down offensively, and I think when you look back at a lot of the threes, which are going to be the big conversation out of this one, the 63s, the 37 out of 49 in the second half, I want to say, is out of their 49 shots, 37 were threes, I believe. A lot of it came from them slowing down, the Knicks closing the gaps, unable to allow driving lanes, and then the paint just got packed as they missed shots. And the Knicks were really, they're a drop team, and I think we come into this series saying, oh, they're going to drop back, and the Celtics are just going to pull up and rain threes over them. Well, if you're not hitting threes, then the paint's packed and you can't get there, and the threes are falling flat, and it looks like what it looked like tonight. Now, I thought for a half and maybe half of the third quarter, they were in control of this game, up 20. They squandered that by probably settling for a handful of threes after that, turning the ball over some late, and then you still have a chance to win this game. And you took some brutal shots down the stretch, particularly Jason Tatum there. And then at the end of overtime, not great plays either. And credit to the Knicks. They defended a lot harder than I thought they were going to.
And I think you look at this on a couple layers. On one hand, they did build a 20-point lead, despite the fact they weren't playing perfect basketball. Porzingis really struggled in his 14-minute stint before leaving the game here with an illness that we don't really know much about. But they're up by 20 with 5 minutes left in the third quarter, and then they blow that one, and it kind of only gets worse in the fourth quarter. And I think if there is cause for concern, it's the fact that they weren't able to respond to that Knicks run the way that they normally do. And I don't think blowing a 20-point lead in today's NBA means a whole lot.
What do you think led to it?
To a sense, you had guys like OG Anunoby who kind of took control of this game and hit their open shots and really outshot the Celtics almost single-handedly. But you never felt the Celtics were able to change what they were doing offensively because it wasn't working. And this is an ongoing question that we've been debating for years, right? Like, when the threes aren't falling, do you go to something else? I normally am in the camp of, they got good looks, and I do think they got good looks today, and I look forward to watching this one again. It was really just the last few possessions where you now need a basket or you were going to lose this game, like end of regulation, end of overtime moments where they could not create separation and drive to the basket. And that's what it gave me a little bit of pause, because you would think that they would have driving lanes here. And from where I was seated, I was like, I feel like they have matchups they could beat, but they weren't able to do that. And I don't know exactly why they weren't able to.
Yeah, they weren't able to get into the offense quickly. I think that's the big thing we'll see when we look back on it here. Now, in terms of the quality of the threes, there was a stat floating around out there. I believe in the second half even, there were 25 open catch-and-shoot threes. That might have been for the game, but I believe it was for the second half, which is pretty crazy if that was the second half. They got a lot of open threes in this game. Now, John said on the show, that means 35 non-open threes. So they definitely forced some up at times. There were definitely some ones after offensive rebounds. I think of Drew running to the corner and just tossing it up. There were a lot of those in this game. And it definitely, watching it, felt dramatic. And then, I sent you the shot chart. It was overwhelming when it was 23 threes and 3 twos. They didn't go to the line in the second half. I think that's an easy second guess there too. But they also turned it over. And they also gave up offensive rebounds at timely moments. They also didn't get back in transition a lot. So there were a lot of other issues here other than the threes. I think that's an easy one to look at. But what stood out to me is that I went in the Knicks locker room and no one in there was throwing a party that they made the Celtics shoot 63s. They were like, yeah, we did not want that. And maybe they're just saying that, but everyone in there said that. So I don't think this one was about the threes. I think it was about the Celtics' inability to get into their offense. And sometimes we talk about it. The mismatch hunting slows you down. It bogs down the offense at times. When it's great, it's great. But when it's bad, we talk about with Hauser. Teams will go at Hauser and teams will go at Pritchard. And it's the opposite of that.
Yeah, and I thought in this game, a lot of what they did was that they wanted to let the role players kind of beat them, and they did. And that's what, when we go back to previous series, sometimes you bank on those guys not hitting their open looks. I don't think they recovered well enough. There were times where it was like they were overhelping, and now next thing you know, a guy has Jalen Brunson had a corner three that he had about 6 seconds to shoot. Like, you never want that, right? You never want that in a playoff game. And so I think as much as the focus of this game is going to be offensively, they're going to go back, and yes, it was 108-105 an overtime game. The defense is not going to jump out at you is the problem here, but I felt defensively they had a lot of mistakes that the Knicks didn't
Look at the last play of regulation. regulation. Brunson got
my
right to
gosh.
the rim for an open layup.
And we haven't even really talked about that play. Nobody really has because it didn't end up costing them. But that game should have ended in regulation on that layup attempt, and that just didn't fall. But I think you have to look at the big picture here. There's the positive of Drew Holiday coming back from a very ambiguous hamstring strain that we worried might linger into this round. He did say he felt good and that he felt like everything was kind of held up well and the adrenaline was kicking, but also he noted that he's going to have to see how he responds tonight and tomorrow. So generally speaking, that's a positive. I thought that he was actually phenomenal and probably their brightest, most silver lining in this game.
He saved them so many times.
Yeah, and I kept thinking to myself, if they somehow pull this terrible game off, he's going to be the hero. He comes back from hamstring injury and he kind of turns this around.
Drew the foul on Towns, getting hit in the face. There's a lot of stuff he did that you expected him to do here, and he didn't look hindered by it at all. But like you said, that thing tends to linger. That thing can be nagging, so it might pop up again down the line. This is the kind of return you want to see from him, though. So that was definitely the biggest positive in this game. The biggest negative, though, Porzingis.
Yeah, and I think we all wondered kind of what was up with Porzingis in the first round. Was it just the Magic schemes? Was it their physicality? It's weird because there were a lot of his worst moments came against players like Corey Joseph and Cole Anthony and guys that have no business limiting him. And early on today, I felt like he was not. He looked like the same guy that struggled in the Orlando series. And then obviously leaves the game midway through the second quarter, very confusingly, like nobody really knows what's going on. Comes back out at halftime, runs up and down the court. I thought he was testing out an ankle or something. And then the Celtics rule him as a questionable to return with a non-COVID illness that we don't have any information about. So I don't know if that's why he was struggling early on. It's hard to kind of make sense of it all. But certainly a lot of questions about both his availability and also his potential offensive impact in the series, because we haven't seen him be impactful in this postseason offensively to any degree compared to what he was during the season.
And that was a concern I had coming into this series, how much of the offensive struggles for certain guys would carry over, because as much as it was the physicality and guys getting fouled and pulled down and all that, for a guy like Porzingis, it was the touch, rushing shots, not being able to find good balance out there on his looks, specifically from three. He missed all the threes to start that series pretty much. So that did carry over for him, yeah. It looked like the same kind of issues. They were trying to get away from him even when the injury started to pop up there into the second quarter, illness rather. So he was talking to the trainers for a little while, went back in at the start of the second, probably played, 4 minutes or so, and then was out of there again for the final 7 there. I thought Luke filled in decently, and this actually looked like it was starting to trend toward Luke, but he started fouling a ton, and then it became an Al game after that. And so, whether he's ready to go or not, we said it on the show, you probably do have to have a discussion at this point of whether he's the best fit in that starting lineup. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it hasn't been a great look to start this postseason for him. And I feel like, on the other hand, if you want to pull another positive from this game, Al continues to defend at a high rate, continues to give them a ton of versatility out there. The rebounding's fine for the most part with him out there. The defense wasn't an issue here, and he held up so well on that end. And
he was awesome.
If he's hitting threes, he's even better.
And let's hear a quick message from our friends over at Prize Picks.
All right, playoffs rolling on here. Basketball, it's all about basketball right now, and you got big stars moving on to the second round. Jason Tatum, Jalen Brunson in this series alone. One of the things I love to do is go over to Prize Picks and see what they think guys are going to score, how many rebounds guys are going to get, how many assists, and all you have to do to get in on the action on Prize Picks is pick more or less on those projections for 2 players. And now that you have baseball going on as well, you can combine leagues, you can do some flex play. So even if one of your guys isn't looking great, you're still in play to win here. And right now you can win many times your money over on Prize Picks and get a shot to go to the championship. In basketball right now, you and a friend, a +1, could win a chance to go to it right now. And as always, with the code CLNS, you'll get $50 when you play a $5 lineup over on Prize Picks. That's $50 right now when you play a $5 lineup over on Prize Picks. They've made daily fantasy sports easy, so go try it out and use that code CLNS to let them know we sent you. Prize Picks, run your game.
So you had this series going 4 games. I'm going to continue to hammer that because I do think that ultimately this is all your fault.
I haven't even looked at my mentions yet, the comments. It's
hopefully everybody forgot that you predicted a sweep here. I had it going 5, so I'm not in that much better shape, but I still have a pathway forward here to victory. Sitting here now after game 1, what's your you can throw out your sweep and what's your new prediction for the series?
I'll stick with 5. I don't love the Knicks.
So you think they're going to win 4 in a row?
I think so. And
okay.
The shooting to me, when I came out of it, I didn't like it. When I thought about it more and heard Joe talk about it and the Knicks talk about it specifically, it didn't concern me as much. And that happens with them sometimes, right? You can almost count on one game in every series looking like that. So I'm not impressed by what the Knicks did overall, especially on the offensive end. Their defense was better than I expected, especially their ability to get into gaps. But if you do pull some positives from this one, they got Towns in foul trouble. They got Hart in foul trouble early. Precious Achiuwa ended up out there at one point, who didn't even play in the first round series because of how battered they were defensively. And when the Celtics are hitting shots and putting pressure on them and the way they're closing the gaps there, I think that's going to be something that's hard for the Knicks to handle in rotation. Now, I underrated OG a little bit. I underrated the impact of a guy like Bridges down the stretch of that game. They were great, especially on the defensive end. So could they take another game here? Certainly, especially with a better offensive showing. But even with all the issues the Celtics had here, they only lost by 3. They had a shot to win it at the end of the 4th, and they were up by 20 in this game. So things
you sound like me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel good about this series, and I felt good. I'm not going to let one night change me. And again, I've said it before, on our shows. Game 1 to me is completely uncharacteristic of how many series go. I know everyone's jumping on the Pacers bandwagon right now too. I still have the Cavs in that series, injuries permitting, because it's getting a little wacky there. The concern is that Hauser's hurt, and I actually think that's a big deal.
I think it's a big deal. I don't think that it should be the thing that flips the series. Ultimately, he has a pretty marginal role still, despite the fact that he is an important
But it probably shouldn't
player.
have been marginal, looking back on it.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. Hauser doesn't play in this game in the first half, checks in with 5 minutes to go, plays for 4 minutes, misses 2 shots, 1 terrible air ball, and then fouls OG Anunoby, and that's it for him. So he had just about the worst night he could have had tonight.
Do you feel good about 5 still?
If I could sit here today and re-predict, I would probably pick 6, but I can't, so I'm going to stay with 5, and I'm going to hope that well, I'm not going to, though, because I'm still in play here. Like, my prediction could still happen, so I'm going to stick with my 5, but I don't feel as good about it. I definitely did not see them dropping this game. I did have a lot more faith in this Knicks team than I think most people, just because, one, it's basketball, anything can happen. We've seen, nobody had Miami winning in 2023. I can't stop bringing it up because they fell 0-3-0 in that series, and it's just, when you look at all the ESPN analysts and every single person has one prediction, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just a bunch of people that like us.
That's what happened here.
That watch a lot of basketball and think they know, and we try our best to predict things. But
well, we thought the regular season would carry over. And
I'm going to go pull up some clips of me saying the opposite, because I actually don't think the regular season carries over as much as people expect. And the Bucks and the Pacers, but the Bucks beat the Pacers 3 out of 4 times this season, and that had no impact on that.
So what's your biggest confidence in 5?
My biggest confidence, I thought they shot. I had an abysmal shooting game that we're not going to see twice in a series. And that still, despite the fact that they did not play great and they really had a tough, second half of the third quarter and fourth quarter here, I still think they're the much better team. And so Tatum and Brown are not going to play like they did tonight. They both had really, really out of character shooting performances, and that's my faith in this team is my faith on those 2 players, because they're proven playoff performers. They're guys that have been there before, and I think they're not going to fold because they're down 1-0. I think they're going to respond. That being said, Game 2 becomes a must-win game, and I didn't expect that. So that's where all the pressure now goes to what's happening on Wednesday night, and are they able to respond? Because you don't want to fall 2-0. That's a much different place than being down 1-0.
I'll do the math thing too. I'll do what Joe would do, and that's that when it is 60-37 in threes, everyone's going to freak out about that. But that puts the Knicks in a tough spot too. And, again, halftime you're feeling good about this. They're up, like double digits?
Yeah.
Midway through the third quarter, you're up 20. And a lot of that was the Knicks can't get threes up, and the Celtics were getting them up with relative ease. And you said it during the show, it was almost like they were excited that they could get them up at this point after that last series.
After they were literally handicapped from being able to do so versus Orlando. I'm sure there was a sense of now we're doing the thing that we've been doing all year.
Yeah, and so what did Joe say, 8 to 10 shots or possessions you look back at here? If you could alter those a little, and I'm sure that's what it was when you look back on it, you still have a pretty daunting 3-point attempt advantage over the Knicks. Now, you can't turn it over, and they did that at times. You can't give up offensive rebounds, and Hart's a problem there right now. But they also drove Robinson off the floor, which was another positive from this game. Maybe they got a little cute with the fouling there, and that got Cornette into foul trouble, which threw off their rotations even more. But when he stopped hitting free throws, the Knicks couldn't play him anymore, and he was actually one of the guys I looked at in this series and was scared of, and he didn't factor into this game at all. So Towns was in foul trouble. Mitchell was playing off the floor. Brunson's still a problem defensively for that team. There's a lot I don't like about that Knicks team that caused me to say this was going to be a sweep, and I probably underestimated them a little bit, but this wasn't a game where I looked at them and said, whoa, that team's way better than I expected them to be. I thought this was on the Celtics and how poorly they played.
Yeah, I think so too. I think just they're a team of fighters. This is a Knicks team that doesn't give up. They were in 6 clutch time games against Detroit, and
The
when they were
clutch
down by
stuff's
20,
scary. You
and
don't
when they
wanna
were down
play
by
in
20 in
clutch
this game,
against
they
them.
could have folded and said, we'll win the next one. We're not supposed to win this game anyways, and they never gave up. And that's emblematic of who this team has been. Ultimately, they haven't always made it easy on themselves. They haven't always played pretty basketball. They haven't always played to their potential, but they've clawed through these games, and that's why they finished with the 5th best record in the league. But we'll know soon if game is cause for concern, because I think game 2 is really going to solidify that. They come out in game 2 and play really well. I think we're able to kind of put this in the back and kind of look towards Madison Square Garden. They dropped this game, and we're talking some 2023 flashbacks.
Well, let's see what the injury report's looking like, because I think that's when the panic could start, but we don't know yet on either of those guys. Didn't look good for Hauser after the game in the hallway. Porzingis, who the hell knows, as always.
We'll have more post-game coverage after Game 2. We'll have more stuff. You can watch all of the full episodes of all the interviews. You have the Knicks side. We have the Celtics side. You can watch what the players have to say for themselves. That's it for us for now, but check out the rest of the coverage on CLNS Media and Celtics All Access.